Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome back to another StarCraft 2 replay cast. This is your host, Overmind, and today we're going to be taking a look at a Zerg versus Terran matchup from the Platinum League. So let's go ahead and talk about our players. Spawning down on the bottom left side of Cloud Kingdom Ladder Edition, in red we have our Zerg player representing Notice and Vortex Esports. It is Bluffkin! And spawning up at the top right side, in blue, we have our Terran player taking his very first gas geyser. It is Chris. Now, it looks like Bluffkin is going to go ahead and go Expo before Pool, which is a solid macro decision. Looks like he's gearing up for a longer game. He's in it for the long haul. And normally I'd talk a bit more about this refinery. However, I'm going to go ahead and drop a spoiler and let you know that the person who sent me this replay did in fact tell me beforehand that this is a meching Terran player, which I for one am quite excited for. I do enjoy mech Terran play, especially, of course, Ravens, because I'm kind of a jerk like that. We do have a scout over here from our Terran player, Chris. He is going to get a good look at that expansion coming on up. Going to circle around the creep, sees that pool is coming on up, and in fact may get to see it finish. Indeed he does, and then that heroic SCV heads on over to a corner to cry and hold himself and hope that nothing attacks him. So good on him, he's doing his job quite well. Looks like we have an expansion being thrown down from Chris, having seen nothing terribly threatening from Bluffkin, and seeing that this may well be a more standard macro game. Looks like we do have a Reaper heading on in, possibly to get some additional scouting info once this SCV becomes irrelevant. He is heading on out. Looks like two slowlings are trying to get him, but at the moment the Reaper is moving on in. There he is, and the Lings retreat back to the base. Queen able to hold this off quite well. Looks like this Queen does just barely get the kill on the SCV, which is sort of unfortunate. He did do his job quite well and was very frightened there at the end. However, his suffering is over. Looks like this Reaper is just going to patrol back and forth here for Chris, and make sure that nothing scary runs out of Bluffkin's base, because no one likes to be suddenly surprised by a Zerg who's just like, you know what? I'm gonna make 1,000,000 Zerglings and send them at you. Ah. Over here we have this expansion well on its way to being done. We have a nice SCV building a bunker here at the front for a little bit of support. Looks like we do have a couple of Zerglings going to try and make it so that this Reaper has to back up. And indeed we have some micro from Chris. All these units are very low. As we head across the field, 2 dead Zerglings. Oh my goodness. That Reaper doing a good job. Looks like we have a pair of Marines over here. However, at the moment we have a factory with a reactor on it producing Hellions. I actually really love Hellions early game versus Zerg. We also have a starport coming up. Hellions are really great at controlling the space. Zerg traditionally is a very mobile army compared to the other two bases, especially once speed is done. We do have speed just beginning for our friend Bluffkin over there on the other side of the map. However, Hellions, being quite quick, actually do a pretty good job of harassing drones and other units that line up really nicely. Slow Zerglings and the like. They also do a good job of controlling the space. Looks like we do have a third going down for Bluffkin as a couple of Queens slowly escort him over to the appropriate area, making sure that the drone doesn't get lost on the way. And here we have our Hellions and single Reaper getting ready to move on in. Very scary situation because the distance between this natural all the way over here to our third is pretty far. And these Queens are very slow up the creep. We do have our Queens here at the front. Not doing too bad of a job at defending that. But of course, as we swing around, we see Chris moving on over, getting ready to come in for the kill on this third. We do see our Queens waddling on over slowly once they get off of that creep. Oh, dead Reaper. Bits of him fly everywhere. However, our Hellions are able to advance along and get away quite easily. And now we have Speedlings! Huzzah! Speedlings, of course, are quite good against Hellions, although maybe not so much Hellbats. If they run in and are sort of bold and get that surround, they definitely don't want to stay in a line like units tend to when they're sent out to attack, so you want to make sure that you split them up, but otherwise they're actually pretty decent. Now we do have Cloak finishing up, and we have a Banshee on the field, so that could well be a problem. Our lair is not quite done yet, and I don't see any spore crawlers over here. Let me check the structures tab real quick. None at all, in fact, so that could well be a problem. Looks like we do have a Baneling nest coming on up. Very good versus Terran, especially versus Bio, though. This Terran is not necessarily looking for Bio. A few impetuous Zerglings do meet their fate at the hands of these Hellbats, which of course are good at roasting things up close and personal. That Queen living a little bit longer than it should have, given that there was a nice transfuse there in the middle. And here we have the drones. Run away, drones! Run away! Only one drone death. That's actually not terrible. However, now we have this third base being attacked. And this is a pretty stressful spot for Bluffkin to be in. He's going to go ahead and make several spore crawlers, 7 of them in fact, and 40 Zerglings, which should well be enough to hold off all of our ground units here. Still not seeing too much in the way of air, although once those spore crawlers are up, he's making 3 more it looks like. Shouldn't be able to get into the main base. Oh, and this is a tense moment. The 40 Zerglings come on in. They do in fact live, but the Banshee! Oh, the Banshee! Oh, dead hatchery, completely bucketed. These poor little broodlings just have nothing to do. The Queens do finally arrive to take care of this Banshee, and looks like he does get killed off. Re-expanding this location, not overreacting at all, continuing to drone, not making a whole bunch more units. Looks like we have Zerglings running around. They did indeed run around this front area. That's pretty well walled off, and there's some units in there, and there's no need to be too aggressive with these. We're just gonna check around, do a good job of running around the map, making sure that we have vision. There are no ninja bases or anything annoying like that. Gonna take some gas geysers, get some upgrades for both players in fact, and it looks like we are going to be transitioning into Vikings for our Terran player. Of course, for our Zerg player, we do now have an Overseer, which would have been invaluable earlier. We have our Baneling nest finished up. We have our lair all done. And everything looks alright. Everything is sort of stabilized. Are going to suicide that Overseer in here to see what's going on. And of course, at this point, Bluffkin having a pretty good idea that this is a meching Terran player. Said Terran player may want to consider moving this base out. Right now, of course, he is doing a pretty good job of making SCVs from that particular spot. There he goes, moving it on out. He's also working his way out of a small supply block, but that's alright. This is all going to be okay. He's setting up this third. Looks like he's doing some pretty decent Viking harass on all of those initially spotting overlords, which, of course, he doesn't want around because he doesn't want Bluffkin to actually know where he is. This Viking, now with 4 kills, having done a very effective job. This Viking guarding the watchtower, which actually is occupied by some unit of Bluffkins that I can't see. It looks like there's a Zergling down there, making sure that he has the watchtower, doing a good job of keeping these so that, in fact, Bluffkin still has some decent map vision, even without the Overlord spread all around. This base has been establishing itself, while that has been going on. We have several Hellbats here to defend. We have a nice little wall over here. That said, we have roaches being produced. We're getting a hive. We're getting additional upgrades. We have scouting Zerglings all around. Looks like our Zerglings are actually moving across the field. They're gonna scout that there's a tank. They've scouted the tank. The tank has scouted them back. That probably wasn't great. We do have 10 kills on this tank, and it looks like 1 from this Hellbat, so not quite as good. Looks like we do have our injured and beaten Zerglings heading back over here to just sort of chill out with this Viking. They're not generally speaking friends, but right now, you know, they both just need a rest. They need some quiet time. That's what's going to be good for both of them. Over here we have an expansion for Bluffkin, undeterred by the fact that he's lost a few Zerglings, undeterred by the fact that he's been harassed, because Zerg players really do need to learn to macro up, and in fact Bluffkin looks like he's learned that exact lesson many a time before. We have our Hydralisk coming on out here very soon, which should be able to help us a lot with those Vikings. And there are the first couple popping on out. We also have a decent amount of roaches around. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the army supply. Looks like it's pretty dang even in both worker and army supply. Chris just slightly ahead in army supply, but at the moment we are going to go ahead and begin to produce Vipers. Now, Chris has this very slow army filled with very large beefy units. And Vipers are these things that aren't necessarily attacking units, they're these flying caster units. And they have one ability that is Consume. It lets them consume friendly buildings or units for more energy, which is good, because they need energy to do their other two abilities. The other one is Blinding Cloud, which reduces the range that things can fire, which is pretty good for tanks. But the one that's most common, the one that I see all the time, is Abduct, which is a move where our friend the Zerg player will go ahead and choose your very most favorite unit, and then pull it in from the safety of your supporting army into its army, and then murder it in front of you. And for those of you Zerg players who want to go ahead and know a bit more about how to use these Vipers, what you want to do is make them, and then use the spells and laugh, and laugh, and laugh, and laugh. Here we have a pretty fortified area from Chris, who's gone ahead and decided to push out across the map. Of course, when your army is not as mobile as your opponent's army, you want to go ahead and pressure them to make sure that, oh my goodness, there is an engagement going on here. Oh my god, the blinding cloud on all the tanks! This is a huge moment for Bluffkin. He's gonna kill all of this off. So many dead tanks, so many dead Thors, so much lost money right there. We now have double the lost resources for Chris as we do for Bluffkin. Looks like Chris gonna have to defend against this push from Bluffkin. Does not have a whole lot more units. I'm actually not gonna go ahead and bring up the units tab just now because I'm so excited by what's going on here. We do have a Banshee with Cloak, which is going to help out a bit. We do have a tank firing back from somewhere. But we're seeing one command center die. Units coming on in. Trying to deal with this. We do have another tank setting itself up. Going to do a decent amount of damage here. Additional tanks sieging up. Of course, once units are right on top of them, tanks are way less useful. We have some Vikings here. Right now, this is massive amounts of damage for Bluffkin. That one engagement really pushed this his way. I have trouble deciding where I want to focus. Over here at the front, looks like this will get repelled, but our third base is being repaired really effectively by every SCV we have. In fact, right now, units are coming in and intermittently wailing on us. And, wow, this third is gonna hang in there. Chris, oh, okay, I was gonna say that repair was ridiculous. That was incredibly good. Here we have more Blinding Cloud going down on the tanks. Additional units coming on in. We do have Vikings here, which of course can kill off those Vipers and should, if possible. Looks like the Viper's going to retreat. Here we have some problems at the front, which is the understatement of the century. Units crashing on in. Oh my goodness, and Chris is somehow going to hold. I think those last-minute Vikings scaring off the Vipers was really the thing to do. But as I said, those Vipers, incredibly powerful units, even though they don't necessarily have an attack of their own, even though they actually take health away from your own units to get their energy sometimes, incredibly good abilities, very good apparently versus mech Terran players. Looks like Chris is undeterred. He knows he got some damage in early. He knows he's taken some damage, and in fact we're going to see how much. Army supply 110 to 56, worker supply 63 to 41. So Chris has been in better shape, but he's just going to go ahead, build an extra command center. He's going to continue to get his upgrades, which is a valiant thing to do, and something that you should always try and do if you're trying to recover from something like this, is to continue to macro as you would normally, and put yourself back where you should be. We have several tanks scattered out about here, so that they can't be rushed up on and blinding clouded as easily, all spread out. We have additional Hellbats and additional Vikings being produced, but I see a Spire coming on up. And Bluffkin's a Zerg player. Bluffkin can tech switch at any point which means that those Vikings are going to have to do the job for all of the anti-air, as far as I know, because he hasn't built very many Marines. Most of his units are mech units, which are on the ground. We do have a handful of Vikings, and I do see some being built intermittently, but I'm not sure if Bluffkin just tech switches into, say, Mutalisk, if this is going to be enough. Bluffkin doing exactly what you should do if you're in a position where you've had a good matchup and a good engagement. He's going to continue to get more ahead. Here we have another engagement. Blinding clouds going down on these tanks, once again, greatly reducing their effectiveness. We have the Vikings coming on in, killing off as many air units as they can, including those Vipers, which have been problematic all game. I believe most of our Vipers are gone now. You have a handful of Hydralisks. Our tank's now doing a much better job of defending, although it may not be enough. This is a very scary situation. Still a decent number of Vikings here. Not able to do too much against these roaches. The roaches do eventually get killed off. Oh my gosh. Chris is gonna give me a heart attack, because he just keeps holding up against this. He is very turtled up. Of course, mech is quite beefy as far as units go. However, I see a lot of Mutalisks being produced. I just saw 10 finish up. It looks like we're adding on another 5. Perhaps I'm misreading that. There's 12 in production right now. There's gonna be a lot of Mutalisks. And this is not a lot of Vikings. We need to make more Vikings. This may well be the thing that winds up ending the game. We do have sort of an air switch going on. We have upgrades for our air units, and Bluffkin, again, doing a good thing, going to make sure he gets more ahead. He's going to build up additional drones. Now, of course, around 70 to 80 workers is where a lot of Zerg players stop droning. But it's better to have a few too many than a few too few. You can always sacrifice those, or make emergency spine and spore crawlers. Looks like we do have only 39 workers for Chris, but he has those nice mules. Army supply vastly different. Here is the Mutalisk flock. They're all spread out here. They're ready. They're waiting. On the other side of the map, we do have roaches, all spread out, waiting to swoop in from behind, perhaps. And here's the engagement. The Vikings, unfortunately, are dying a lot. We do have our Hellbats coming on over. We have tanks down here, but none of those things can shoot up, Chris. Oh, Chris, you've held so well, and here come the roaches in from behind. Tanks and Hellbats doing lots and lots of damage versus the roaches, cleaning them up quite nicely, but there are still these Mutalisks that we have to deal with, and we just don't have anything. I mean, I don't know what Chris is going to do at this point. Apparently what he's going to do is leave the game. Oh my goodness. Alright, so lots and lots of excitement all throughout the game. Thank you so much to the Vortex Esports people for sending this in. If you would like to see me cast one of your replays because you've enjoyed watching this cast or one of my other casts, go ahead and send that game to NoobCrafted@gmail.com. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Thanks for sticking with me. I'm sorry I've been sort of away doing holiday stuff, but I promise I will try my hardest to go ahead and do some more casting. In any case, thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you on the ladder.